All right. Hello and welcome to Just Animals podcast. I'm Elle, and with me as always is my dad, aka Guy.
Hello, Pod World. I'm excited to be here, and
Okay,
it's
you
a
can
sunny
turn your
day.
talk into the mic, please.
It's a sunny day.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Thank
Here,
you.
I'm
And
gonna move
then,
the mic here.
okay, great. Perfect. Yes, great. And with us today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Stephanie Poindexter, all the way from Buffalo, New York. We are very excited to have her here. I'm not going to steal any of her thunder, so I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us what our animal of the episode is going to be. Because for me, I'm very excited about this. And Guy, I'm sure you will be too once you learn what this is. And you might have to Google it for a second, but once you see the picture, you will recognize it. So, Dr.
Okay.
Stephanie, take it
Well,
away.
I'm
All right,
excited.
will do, will do. Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here too. I'm excited to talk about the wonderful slow loris.
Yes.
Slow lowers?
Yes, you've seen them because they
Okay.
were really popular on social media for like a year or two. I mean, they still are, but like
Dr.
you'll
Stephanie, is there a fast loris, or is
You
it?
know, I will say that I have seen fast lorises, but there isn't a fast loris to compare with the slow lorises, but the slow lorises aren't always as slow as people expect them to be.
So what's their scientific name, really quick?
Sure.
Oh,
So
wait.
there Nycticebus. Well, there's Nycticebus is one genus, and then there's Xanthornycticebus, which is the newest one.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, they've been split into two. So there was the pygmy slow loris, which
Right.
about 2 years ago got was it 2 years ago? Maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half. Some relatively recently, it's now Xanthornycticebus. So it has its own genus. And then there are the other 8 slow lorises that are still in Nycticebus.
And what does that mean? What does that translate to?
It's like a night monkey.
Night monkey.
Essentially, yeah, it's a night monkey. And then the
Night monkey.
Xanthornycticebus is golden night monkey.
Golden. Okay, so we have night monkey and the golden night monkey. All right. Okay. And then how did they get the names? No. How did they get the name Slow Loris? Because what was this the first like scientists to discover them? As we know, scientists like to name things after themselves.
Well, it's not named after a person, but as you can imagine, being out at night can be scary. And so a lot of those early discoveries or descriptions of slow lorises involve people who probably came across it very quickly for a short period of time. Maybe they shined light on them, though. I keep thinking about this as like 1600, 1700,
Yes,
not
that's what it
shining
says
lights
here.
in the same way.
Yeah.
But
Nice
they
candle.
do freeze. Yeah, well, that's a candle up to them. But they do freeze when they're sort of startled. And
Okay.
if you don't follow them throughout their entire active period, they might not move a lot to you. If you see them for half an hour, they can stay in a tree. A couple hours, they can stay in one tree.
Okay.
They aren't necessarily as slow as you might think from the name, but they do move like in a deliberate way.
Sure.
And then the loris part of it is actually sort of derived from a Dutch word that, and it's like it means various things, but you can sort of easily translate it to clown. So they have these really these faces that look like they've been painted in the way that a clown sort of looks. And so slow clown.
So night monkey, slow clown. I mean, this poor thing.
All right, my turn.
Fine. Go on.
Dr. Stephanie, I understand this is a primate.
Mhm.
Is that
boy.
called a lesser primate? And I'd like you to define for me
Oh, boy.
primate, because
Sure.
this creature doesn't look anything like you or me. That's
Okay,
number one.
really quick,
Go
like
ahead.
Dr. Dre said, remember when she, Dr. Dre with the hyenas and the meerkats and whatnot,
Yes.
she's at the Duke Lemur Center.
Mhm.
She's, lemurs are primates. And, Dr. Stephanie, you and I, we talked about this, but I think a lot of people like don't realize that they are also like
You are
the same
primates,
family. Yeah.
They're all in
Yeah.
one order together.
Yes, right. Yes.
We have differences, but we've got a lot of similarities.
Well, from what I heard, and I think I don't want to misquote this, but I think our DNA and a gorilla's DNA are 98% similar. Is that right? Something like that?
Gorilla, yeah, I think it's like 96, 98.
It's pretty dang high, but
it's a lot. It's a lot.
So
yeah.
that 2%, I mean, I wonder what that 2% is. Is that like giving us they communicate as well, but we're going to get off the topic. So a primate, I need you to define that. And number two, second question, what did your parents say to you when you said, "Oh, I'm going to get a PhD in the slow loris"? Did they say, girl, we're gonna slap you in the head or something?
Said, what are you thinking?
Or what in the
All right,
hell is
okay, so
that?
I'll start
Now,
first.
whose money is this getting PhD in slow Loris? Not my money.
I was actually really excited, but it's mostly because they don't really know what's going on in terms of what I'm doing. They're like, yes, yes, that sounds great. Yeah.
Yes.
So you're going to do what? Yeah.
And you're going to Southeast Asia? Okay,
Yeah.
girl. Yeah.
But you should see my dad loves animals. His refrigerator is like covered in little slow lore stickers. Has
Oh,
like my friends who do scientific illustrations. He's got copies of all of their work. Like he's
oh, so your
leaned
dad's into it. Your dad's like, all right. Has your dad
Yeah,
come on
but
any
He did.
explorations or field research with you yet?
He has not, but that I would really like to do that. Like I want to take him to the field site in Thailand. He hasn't gone yet, but they're all just like very excitable.
That's awesome. Oh, that's awesome. That's
They're
awesome.
happy about it. No one's complained. I haven't
Right.
asked them for rent money in like a decade.
Oh,
So
well, perfect. Hey, you know, if the slow Loris is paying the bills, I'm sure they're like, great,
yeah,
keep doing
but
the slow Loris thing.
but did their jaw drop when you said, "Hey, I'm going to go get a PhD and I'm going to specialize in slow Lars"? It's like you
well, I
and
mean, similar to most people, they're like, we don't know what that is.
yes, exactly.
I probably didn't really know what it was either, right? Like I didn't know what I was really getting myself into. I just sort of
Right.
arrived and like, all right, well, I'm going to keep studying, animals and their ecology and their evolution. And they're like, okay, sure, that makes sense. I was an anthropology major. No one knows what that is anyway. When you
Like,
until
you
haven't all the
s-
fossils
did-
been dug up yet? Like, I'm sure
Did
people
you
say that.
did you spin the wheel and slow Loris came up
Can
on
you
the
let her
big
tell us
wheel?
how she got to the slow Loris? Let her tell us.
Yeah.
I feel like we'll get. I'll try to hit all of the road, the
Yeah.
stops along the
Yes.
way. All right.
Okay, so let's talk about primate because this,
Yep.
we're in the same tree, but boy, we're on different ends of this tree.
Yeah. So we do have, like I said, we have a lot of differences, but we also have a lot of similarities. And I think for a lot of people, I mean, even now, it's hard to think of yourself because primates are animals. They're over there. We're over
Yes.
here, but we are also animals. And so
Right.
people have a hard time sort of reconciling how we could be similar. But in general, it's not hard to define a primate. It's you have to have these 5 characteristics. And I might go slow because
No, go slow.
normally it's like I can pull it off the top of my head very easily, but sometimes it's been a little while since I have to teach this specific bit about primates, but it's more or less we've got nails instead of claws on most of our
Okay.
digits.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
like
that's
we've got
good.
a nail bed and then like a soft sort of tactile pads on the other end so we can feel how soft something is, how hard something is.
The better to feel you with, my
How
dear.
better to feel it. Exactly. We typically have forward-facing eyes.
True.
If you think about a squirrel, they've got laterally placed eyes, so they're pretty
Mhm.
much on the side of their heads. They
Yes.
actually have more visibility behind them, but they have to
Mhm.
turn their heads a lot. For us, having these forward-facing eyes, we have stereoscopic vision, so we can see sort of in 3D, if you will, or like through things.
Mhm.
I always make my students do this little exercise where if they cover their left or their right eye and then close one eye, if you have one eye at a time, you can only see like the bit that's in front of the right eye or in front
Sure.
of the left eye, reversed. But when you have both eyes open, you can sort of see through.
Right. And you get the
Um,
depth and
Yeah,
whatnot.
it gives you depth. Yeah, a depth of field,
Right.
depth perception, and so that was
Yes.
supposed to help us kind of live in dense tangles in treetops and be able to get to the terminal ends and grab things. So what did I say? Eyes,
Nails.
hands,
Nails, pads.
nail pads. Well, there are more.
Yeah.
No,
There's
I mean,
like
all those
5
make a lot of
categories.
sense. Those,
Yeah.
I mean, those all, it's like, those are all great points. So thank
Yeah,
you.
there are a few other
Let me
things.
see.
Yeah, I'm sure the internet has a lovely list of it.
I'm
And if
going
I
to
could
help you
find
out.
that
Yeah.
page in my textbook. Uh, there's like a social element to it as well. Like we have,
Sure.
encephalization. Oof, using fancy words. But essentially our brain is bigger than it should
Large
be for
brains,
our
yes.
body size.
Oh,
Like if we were
okay.
just scaling our bodies proportionally with our brains based
Sure.
on other animals, it should be
Yes.
smaller. But it
Sure.
is
Right.
unusually large.
I think we do have some people
Yes.
with small brains, though, let's be honest.
I mean, they might have a decent sized brain, but are they using it?
Yeah, well, yeah, there. No.
Forward
But yeah.
orbitals, stereoscopic vision, relatively large brains, opposable halex,
Yes.
halex,
Thumbs, opposable
and
thumbs.
halex and polex. I don't know what that means. Halex
So
and
thumbs, big toes and
Yeah.
big thumbs. Our big
Phalanx.
toe and our thumb.
Phalanx.
unfused and highly mobile radius and ulnar
Ulna.
in the
Yes.
forelimb and tibula. Okay, well, all right.
Tibias in
So
your
now
leg. So are we doing leg? Are you talking about leg? You're talking about the
So
Well, like
doc,
most basically like in other mammals, those are fused, but ours are
Right.
not fused. So we can rotate them and it
Right.
helps with our mobility for like brachiating
yeah,
or for moving variably in different substrates, different contexts.
Ah, that
Dr.
makes-
Stephanie, is there a differential between the slow lores and the pygmy slow lores?
There is now, yes.
yeah, she just said they're two separate genuses.
Okay. So I'm reading. This is very interesting, which I know you're going to talk about. Pygmy slow lores are the only
Yes,
known
good. Read the
venomous
expert
primates.
about perfect. Yeah, read the expert. and
Yeah,
that's what
so I didn't
needs
know
to be
that we
expert.
primates have venom.
They're
I mean,
venomous. Well, all of them.
we speak a
Well,
lot of venom, but we don't have.
I mean, okay, but a human bite can kill you. Like that's like you need to go to
Well,
the ER.
yeah,
Like you don't want to be
yeah,
bitten by a
right. No,
human
but
though.
yeah,
yes.
or I learned recently cats. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, cats fuck you up.
Cat, yes.
One of my cats bit the other one and he was well, he's okay. He's okay. But the vet was just like, they have disgusting mouths. Love them to
Yeah.
death. Okay. But yeah, so they are the only venomous primate. Good evidence for pygmy lorises, good evidence for actually pygmies probably have the best evidence, but it's sort of expected that the Nycticebus as well, because I mean, until 2 years ago, pygmies were Nycticebus. So the idea is that all of them probably have the capacity. We just haven't measured each of those species specifically, but they are the only venomous primate.
So there's a genetic difference between the pygmy and the regular loris?
Yes. So there's like a distinct size difference,
Right, well,
geographic
pygmy.
barriers, genetic variation to sort of pull together enough evidence for, it was actually my PhD advisor and some of her colleagues that were like, there are enough differences and enough distinctions here. Like the last time they shared a common ancestor was so far ago or so
Like their
long ago.
taxonomic tree is very
So
Yes.
they're
can they
very
breed?
wide.
They're
and
enough to
split.
be distinct.
Sure.
So they
Evidence of
can they
pygmies
mate?
and
Let her
other
finish.
Yeah.
pygmies and other slow lorises like hybridizing, but
Mhm.
we
Yeah.
have seen some evidence of individuals within that larger sort of slow loris group maybe hybridizing in certain places that they overlap geographically. Actually, interestingly enough, which probably further helps with this sort of speciation that may have happened, is that the places where we do see slow lorises overlapping in the same forests, it tends to be pygmies and the largest, which is the Bengal slow
Oh,
loris.
sure, that
So
makes sense. Probably different food niches and
yeah,
resource requirements.
and they do have some slight behavioral differences, but honestly, it's hard to say a lot of this stuff without more data. Like we always need more data about slow lorises in the wild from different places on different species. I'm actually now studying the largest species, which is the Bengal slow loris.
Like the Bengal tiger, but the Bengal slow loris.
Okay,
Mhm.
so this is interesting that I just read. It said a slow loris is not a monkey, but it is a primate.
Yeah, okay, we've established they are
Yes.
primates.
Yes,
Yes.
no, I understand that, but it's not a monkey.
No,
I can take you through that distinction.
please
Okay,
do.
go ahead. Yes,
Primates, we are all primates. It's like the
Right.
order that we live in.
right.
But when you start to break down different types of primates, we have haplorhines, which include us, great apes, monkeys. And then there are strepsirrhines, which are the lemurs, lorises,
okay.
bush babies / galagos, they're the same thing, NYTbos, all sorts of, most of the primates that you see, and then you're like, how is this a primate? Like, looks really weird.
Yeah.
Strepsirrhines.
Is
So
that an
they're
ii too? Sorry.
eyes. Yep, that's
Okay.
an
Yes,
eye, a
that's-
type of lemur. That's a strepsirrhine.
Oh, okay.
So is that what they used to say is a lesser monkey, or what was the word that we learned? Was it a lower monkey or lesser monkey? Or
If you're talking about gibbons, they're like lesser apes. But
lesser apes, lesser
people
apes, yes.
will not like that you said.
Yeah.
It's not crazy contentious, but yes. So a lot of the times when people are thinking about primates, they are like centering humans, and so they
Yes.
think about this progression towards us. And from that perspective, gibbons. So if we're thinking about apes, there are chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, and gibbons. But of those, gibbons are the smallest and have the most. They're more distant from us than chimps, gorillas, and orangutans. And so people refer to them as like lesser apes, whereas those other larger bodied ones, slightly more related to us, are thought of as great apes.
Can I get a shout out for the bonobos? Is it true that they don't fight with each other like chimpanzees? And I think they're very peaceful primates.
The
which,
matriarchal society, correct?
yeah, we need
Yes,
more of their
They are.
genetics.
I'll say more peaceful. They're still wild animals,
Right.
but
Yes.
chimpanzees are
No,
Chimpanzees are
they're
fucking
bad.
vicious.
They're
They are,
bad. They're
I
they
play
are
bad.
movies about
mean.
chimpanzees
They'll
on
rip your
Halloween.
face off.
They're
They'll rip
scary.
your face off. Yes.
Yeah,
No,
I don't think
chimpanzees
people
are.
realize how violent and aggressive. I mean, they
No,
eat
they.
each other, they eat other
Yes.
monkeys. Like, I don't
Yes.
think, like, I don't know why
They'll
Michael Jackson had
they'll like
bubbles.
kill each other, not
Yes.
for
Yeah,
food, just
yeah, just because they
Right.
can. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the crazy.
Yes.
They're
That's very,
insane.
very, yeah. But the
But,
bonobos, I
good
think.
job, all the people doing chimpanzee research.
Couldn't
Won't
be me. Couldn't pay me.
terrified.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Okay.
Pass.
Let's get them on this just next.
Well, okay, yeah. So how did you end up
Yeah.
in the slow loris corner, if you will?
Yeah, sure. That is a good question. Well, growing up, I spent a lot of time going to the zoo. That's like one of my dad's
Fantastic.
favorite pastimes.
Yay,
Hang out,
Dad.
go to the zoo. Yes, thank you. He likes feeding squirrels on the sidewalk. He loves all this stuff. And so I spent a lot of time going to the zoo. And honestly, like I remember from a young age seeing primates in the primate house and being like, I don't really know how we're different from them. Like they're
Right.
doing the same. I see so much of like myself and people around me
Of course.
their
Like
mannerisms,
grooming,
their
you
facial
know.
expressions. Yeah, they're taking care of their babies, this, that, and the other. So I think that was always kind of in the back of my mind. And when I went to undergrad, originally I was pre-med, and so I went to WashU in St. Louis because they had a good medical school.
Sure,
In
yeah.
my mind, in my 18-year-old mind, I was like, that's how you do that. You go
Right.
undergrad with a good medical school. But anyway, they also had a lot of primatologists in their anthropology department.
Oh, sure.
So I was taking classes about primate behavior and ecology. In my very first semester, I took human evolution.
Ah,
The first part of human evolution was just about primates. I was like, wait a second. So you mean to tell me that this is a job people have?
right.
They look at monkeys. At the time, yes, everything was a monkey still.
Yeah, right.
All
This
the
monkey,
distinctions.
that monkey,
Yeah.
they're all, yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
So I was like, wow, I mean, I would much rather do this. And I was doing an internship at the hospital. And I was like, I don't really like the smell of the hospital. I'd rather look
I gotta smell monkey cage.
Well, I don't know. I wasn't so interested in like working in captive settings per se, though that was like the only exposure I had to studying primates is, oh, you can be a curator at the zoo or you can be the research manager at the zoo.
Right.
Um,
Instead of
and
like
so
field
I was like kind of,
research.
yeah, that's what research looked like to me. I didn't know anyone who went out to the forest to do anything. And I wasn't one of these early like Jane Goodall or Diane Fossey. I'd seen all the movies or read the books and I was obsessed. Like that wasn't me at the time.
Right. Yeah.
I came to all of that a bit later, which is, a lot of the people I meet who study primates, Jane Goodall is they idolized her since they were young.
Right. Right.
And
Yes.
I probably knew who she was,
Right.
but it wasn't like my driving force.
Right. You didn't want to be the next Jane Goodall, essentially.
No, yeah, that wasn't what brought me to primatology. I do remember taking a class in particular with a professor about primate conservation biology. And I thought that was really interesting, trying to figure out like why are these populations declining? How are humans impacting them? And so when I graduated and I needed to go to graduate school, my plan was to go to graduate school. I was looking for programs that focused on primate conservation. And at the time, there were very few of them. And that's what took me to the UK. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're kind of in a pendulum where it's becoming less popular again, just because anthropology departments are having a hard time.
Sure.
But when was this? 2012? 2012 was when I decided to go to Oxford Brookes to do the primate conservation program. Also, I love being ed here.
Absolutely.
So let me go to England.
Yeah, and they speak English, so it's not like you have a language barrier.
Exactly. Let's do it. I'm always ready to get on a flight. That's another thing. I don't really know where I got that from, but yes, sign me up. Where are we going? I'm gonna go somewhere. It's unusual. I don't care. Let's go.
Fantastic.
But yeah, so I got to primate conservation in the UK, and that's where I met Anna Nakaris, who is like the queen of slow lorises. I think her handle on social media is Queen Fireface, which is like a translation of a Indonesian word for slow lorises.
Oh, no kidding.
But she has been studying them for I want to say at least 30 years now. I don't know a very long time. Like she really pioneered our ability to study and sort of understand slow lorises. But yeah, I went there. I was like, I want to study chimpanzee welfare because that's all they had at the St. Louis Zoo. That was, I don't know, they had other primates, but that's what made sense to me at the time. And she was like, well, lots of people do that. But also,
have you seen this?
Yeah. You're interested in welfare? Have you seen this thing? I was like, oh, I have a faint memory of it from a class. Yeah, they're a little weird. She's like, we don't know nearly enough about this primate. And it sounds like the things that you're interested in could be applied just the same here and have like a really big impact. And that intrigued me, right? I like solving problems. I like
Sure.
answering questions. I mean, now reflecting on it, it was a great decision because chimpanzee research, from my perspective, is really saturated.
Oh my God, yes.
We know so much about chimpanzees. Not to say that there isn't more to study,
Right, right.
for those watching, about your best dreams. But there is also something to be said about like, I just don't know. I can't even formulate a hypothesis about what might happen because I don't have any context to put like to apply to this. And so, man, that was in 2013. Oh goodness. And yeah, I fell down the rabbit hole, been looking at slow lorises in various contexts since then.
So now when you've said I'm going down the slow loris track, now I want to know, I know your daddy is a very pro animal person, but what did your mom say to you?
I don't even remember. I guess she probably just said okay. You're like, yeah,
As far as
all
like you're your father's child, go for it.
or, I don't ever remember a conversation. I know this is like such a trope, and I feel like I see it on TV all the time. It's just like, well, what type of job are you going to get with that degree?
Right.
I don't have any
Yes.
memory of anyone ever saying that to me,
Oh,
That's
that's
awesome.
nice.
which is
That's
kind of
very
yeah,
nice.
which is nice.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think it really was. I wasn't asking them for money, so they're like,
Yeah.
great, we're not concerned. We're just go for it.
That's awesome. That
Yeah.
All
is
right.
awesome. So
Okay.
average slow, so I know there's like average pygmy slow loris size versus the Bengal slow loris.
Sure.
What are average sizes?
Pygmies 300-400 grams. Bengal is about 2,000 grams.
You
So I
translate
used
that to
to-
American, please.
2,000.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Uh,
God.
28 grams
like
to an
4
ounce.
pounds.
Yeah.
A pound is 2.2, I think, kilos.
Right.
2.2,
Roughly, yeah.
So like
So
4.5 pounds for a Bengal,
Mhm.
and then
the pygmy is
half,
Like a
a
half
quarter
pound.
pound.
Oh, that's
for the
I mean,
pygmy?
Is that
that's
right?
teeny.
Did I
Wait,
do that math right?
how many grams is it? I'll do the
400.
conversion.
400.
400
not a
grams?
lot.
300, 400.
That's not a lot at all. 400 grams? That's a meal.
400 grams. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
0.88 pounds. Let me convert that to ounces.
0.88 pounds. Okay, yeah.
14 ounces. It's 14 ounces.
What math was I doing? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
14 ounces.
Oh my God.
So,
That's
Dr.
teeny.
Stephanie, are these things, do they like to cuddle or?
It's a wild animal. What animal
No,
likes
I
to
know,
cuddle
but
with
I
you?
mean, some.
They will sleep next to each other. Yes, they will sleep next to each other. They carry their offspring around. They are very fluffy. Like I can't be mad at people who think lorises are cute because they are cute.
They are
I just
Yes.
need people to fight the urge to take and touch them.
right.
Oh, right.
Like you're cute in the forest,
Where
in
you
the
belong.
where you're supposed to be. Yeah. But they are very cute. They're just little fluffy balls. And if you
Right.
see the babies too, they're even smaller, fluffier,
Right.
and more ball shaped.
Have you felt one? Like,
I
like,
have, yeah. I
what do
have.
they feel
Yeah,
like?
they're fluffy. They're like pillows.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So what's their
So,
lifespan in the wild? Do we know that?
Yeah, I say about 20 years, 25 years.
wow,
Oh wow.
not bad.
Well, let's go with 20 years. Let's be conservative.
That's still a lot longer than I was even gonna
Yeah, it is. It is a long time. Yeah. Primates have relatively long life histories.
They do.
Dr. Stephanie, were you the one that did the fecal analysis of the slow loris?
I did not.
Oh,
I have
okay.
not. I have no poop collected by me.
All right. Because they were talking about what the pygmy eats by looking at the fecal analysis. And it's like, some assistants got that job.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when you capture them, it really just depends on in what settings. Like I've
Yes.
worked at rescue centers where it's going to be a lot easier to collect fecal samples.
Right.
And if it's an arranged country, then they're probably getting a natural-esque diet.
Yes.
But when I was working for the little Fireface project, whenever we did a lot of morphometric measuring, so like how long are their limbs, how long is their body, how much do they weigh,
Yeah.
and whenever we captured them, if we could get a fecal sample, then we would. I didn't analyze any of that. But yeah, I mean, poop science is a thing. The people are people learn a lot.
Scatology or whatever they call it. So okay, so where in the world do we find the slow loris, and what's like the ideal slow loris habitat?
Sure. So they are endemic to parts of South and Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Depending on what species it is, you can find them as far as the Philippines.
Oh wow.
over to parts of like Bangladesh. And so they have a relatively broad geographic
Yeah,
range, but
they
again,
really do.
it can be isolated, like certain species can be restricted to certain islands, maybe like the Javan
Right.
slow loris is only on the island of Java in
Sure.
Indonesia. That's another thing that's interesting about the Bengal slow loris is that they have the broadest geographic range. You can find them in China, Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia. Well, yes, Indonesia. I'm gonna cringe when I say that, but lots of various parts throughout Southeast Asia. Ideal habitat, we find them in all sorts of places. I mean, obviously forested areas, rainforest, temperate climates, but I think we probably got to in-depth studies of them after a lot of forests are now degraded.
Yeah.
But we find them in plantations, you can find them in people's gardens. They will be on electrical wires. They
Oh,
they
God.
persist in all sorts of areas. One place that has a long-term study site of the Javan slow loris is a montane agroforest. And so it's at higher elevations than they probably would have evolved in. And it's like these little pockets of farmlands with forested areas. And so they can really survive in a whole mix of places.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So then where have you studied them in your field research?
Right. Yes. So I have studied them in Vietnam and Indonesia and Thailand, which is where I'm working now.
Interesting. And what's the slow loris diet? What do they like to eat?
Sure. They're actually pretty prominent gum feeders, and so they will pull away the bark from trees. When a tree is damaged, the way that it tries to heal itself is by producing some sort of gum or resin or latex, just some sort of substance that they use to sort of mend themselves. Lorises can eat that. I mean, lots of other animals will eat this sort of gum as well, but it can make a really large part of their diet. They'll also eat insects. They'll eat floral nectar. So I've seen them go to those sort of terminal branches within trees, pull in flowers, lap up some nectar, and like leave the flower intact.
Oh, okay.
And so from that perspective, they can be pollinators. They come out with all of this pollen on their face, and they're moving
Sure.
from flower to flower.
Sure.
There are some instances, and some people report that they'll eat fruits, but very rarely, and they're definitely not the fruits that we're used to eating in terms of how much sugars are in them.
Fair enough. Now, are they like solitary or pack animals, or do they have little like, is there a slow loris herd of some sorts, or are they
Yeah,
just kind of like only together for mating and then separate
so they'll
ways?
actually live in, at least the slow horses that I've studied,
Mhm.
typically live in this sort of dispersed family unit, is what we call it, where there's one male and there's one female. And we know
Mhm.
this from a lot of like GPS data, studying where they're moving over years. It'll be one male, one female sharing the same space, her offspring, likely his offspring, but I can't say that genetically. Um, and so, yeah, we kind of call it like the dispersed family unit. But a lot of people have said that they are solitary, and that has led to all sorts of like misunderstandings and improper housing and just various cascading effects from our limited understanding of them in the wild. But when you study them for longer periods of time, more consistently, you see that they do have a fairly substantial social life. So they'll
Oh,
interact
okay.
with each other, they'll play with each other, they groom each other. So they'll sometimes sleep in the same place, sometimes not, but they do tend to feed and forage on their own. So
Okay.
if you're following them throughout the night, you're like just see one and think, oh yeah, this is a solitary primate. But they actually do kind of have more of a robust social interactions with other slow lorises.
Okay,
Interesting.
my turn.
Fine.
So I want to find out the chicken and the egg, and here's my
Oh boy.
question. So it says here on this thing that I'm looking at, it says the first and third of these limitations in energy supply have been cited as factors selecting for low metabolic rates in leaf eating and ant or termite eating. So are they slow because of their diet, or are they slow and then their diet represents which
Mhm.
is affecting what?
Right. I never know the answer to chicken or egg questions, but
Okay.
I think for lorises, it might be a little more complex than that. First off, they have a lower than expected basal metabolic rate. And so they
Interesting.
actually like they need less to sustain themselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there are a few species that we know that go into torpor. So they can like just minimize their energetic requirements
mhm.
depending on what the environment is doing. Like if it's too
Mhm.
cold, they can just slow everything down and not need as much. I do think like their body size and their energetic requirements might factor into what they're eating, because the smaller pygmy eat more insects, which if you have a smaller body size, you need to, if you're going to exert energy, you need to get a higher return on
Right,
that
right.
energy use. And so they're feeding more on insects. I think them relying on gums, it really just depends on where they are. Sometimes the gums that they're really eating are actually introduced species,
Uh-huh.
but it's a really stable food source. It's present all year round. It doesn't have
Yeah.
the inconsistencies and fluctuations that you might find when you've got fruiting trees, or there's not that same seasonality. They
Sure.
are capable, but the thing is with eating gums, you have to be able to break it down and process it.
Sure.
And so that requires a longer passage rate, or passage time to actually pull nutrients from these sort of poor quality foods. Um, not I think, but another thing about lorises is that my PhD student loves talking about this. They have like these slow twitch muscles, which aren't very common across other primates. We have slow twitch muscles,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
that might factor into some of their slower, more deliberate movement.
mhm.
I'm not an expert about that, but that could factor in with it. But um, I don't know how. I think it would take more studies and more research to really make that connection between their diet type and them moving slowly. Like these are
Okay.
advanced chimpanzee questions, and we haven't gotten there yet in slow
Very
loris.
good. So here's a follow-up question. It says that they furthermore, they often contain high concentration of chemical compounds with deleterious physiological effects on forages. So they can eat poison and be able to, I guess, digest it or not have it affect them. So do you
Mhm.
have any comment on that?
It's probably because of their ability, like the same thing that makes them able to pull nutrients out of poor quality things like
Sure.
gums, probably allows them to not to be able to tolerate these noxious and poisonous things. It's also thought that they might be like, it might factor into their venom use, like maybe there's secondary sequestering happening of these, or there's sequestering secondary metabolites that then sort of give potency, if you will, to the brachial oil that they produce that, works within their venom.
Oh, that makes sense.
Interesting.
That makes sense.
But
Interesting.
I just think they have the gut capacity to deal with these hard to break down things.
Interesting.
I don't know
Wow.
if that's a gut capacity. They have their gut is designed to be able to break down these tough things.
That's insane. So
So what is their in terms of their living area or hunting area, or how far do they travel in their normal routine?
It can range, really can range up to a kilometer. Well, I don't know what that is in miles. I really don't know
it's a
what that
little
is.
less than a
I can
mile,
convert, yeah.
Okay.
like 0.8, I think.
Okay, and that not just like, well, that's some of the linear measurements of like their routes throughout a night. But in addition to like moving in that 2 dimension, they are always moving up and down trees. So there's a lot of vertical movement that
Sure.
happens in lorises, but sometimes it really just depends on what they're up to that night. Sometimes it's, half that, sometimes it is about a mile.
Interesting.
Are they monogamous, or they just breed and run?
Oh, we like monogamy is like this we conserve that term for like very specific. We know exactly that her offspring or his offspring, and they're maintaining this very consistently in primates.
Yeah.
From what we know, they tend to have this one male, one female group. For most of the slow lorises, there have been other reports for the pygmy lorises where you might see one male moving across multiple females. So they can have different social strategies, but they don't live in big groups. So you won't find one male and four female, or four female and four males sort of living in close proximity to each other. It tends to be one male, one female, or sometimes one male and multiple females.
Okay. Are
And
they
when,
nocturnal?
They
yes,
are nocturnal,
yeah, they
yes.
have those big
Ah,
eyes.
I don't know. They
Oh,
could
we
maybe
gotta
just have
look.
big
They
ass
have,
eyes just to have big eyes. I
no,
don't know.
they big eyes are a natural thing to help
Well, I
them.
have horse eyes and I still can't see, so riddle me that one, sir.
They also have something called a tapetum lucidum, which is like this extra layer behind their retina, which helps like once light comes in, they can bounce it back. So it makes them gives them more visibility in like low light situations.
Oh, it's like, when you shine a flashlight in, like your dog's eyes at night, and then we get the
Yes.
red
Yes,
behind their eyes.
that's what causes it. That's what causes it. So, interestingly enough, like tarsiers, which is another nocturnal primate, they're not strepsirrhines though. They are this weird exception. They're haplorhines. They don't have a tapetum lucidum, but they have massive. Their eyes are even bigger than other nocturnal primates. And so,
Interesting.
yes, huge eyes, good sign that they're moving around at night. But also, you can have smaller eyes with that tapetum lucidum to sort of enable you to see in low light
Interesting.
situations.
So how is the slow loris population doing?
Poorly.
Oh gosh, I thought you were
damn
going to
it.
say that.
Sorry. Yeah.
Damn
I'm
it.
sorry. All
Yeah.
wild populations are declining.
Yeah, we know. It's an unfortunate theme on this show.
Yes,
Yeah.
animals. The animals are not all right.
No, they're
and
not.
deforestation, which
It's the
or-
office calling.
Oh my God, turn your phone off.
that's a great ringtone though.
He's got all kinds of rings. Yeah.
That's really funny. But yeah, no, deforestation, of course, human population expansion, forested lands being converted for various reasons, plantations, agriculture, all sorts of things are just creating less spaces for them. But also they're so dang on cute that people like to keep them as pets or
Illegal
photo
pet trade.
yeah. And so there's like this other human influenced like factor that's causing their population decline. Yeah,
That damn pet trade, I swear.
not so hot for
pet
the
trade.
wild horses.
No. So how do they communicate like with each other? Do they do any sort of like vocalization, or is it
Mhm.
mostly like body language or?
Yeah, so a combination of things. They will scent mark, so they're using olfaction. You can get a lot
Scent
of information
marking.
from scent marks. I'm sure Dr. Drea talked about scent marking and olfaction. So you can get a lot of information from that, but also they do have audible vocalizations and ultrasonic vocalizations. So they're just communicating with each other and we can't even hear it.
Okay, how do they produce ultrasonic noise? First of all, that's
I don't know how it's I don't know the mechanics of how it's produced. I just know that they're emitting them because we've reported them with bat recorders. And I say we, I mean collective we, those who study slow loris.
yes. Wait, yeah. So
Uh,
was that by accident? Was someone like studying bats and like we're getting this like other noise
Sure.
wave
I
and
mean,
it's not a bat?
that sounds like how you would stumble upon this thing. I think it was mostly that they were using particular receivers to record their vocalizations that only went to a certain range, and then they got new ones that had a longer spectrum, if you will, that like they can
Sure.
record higher frequencies, and that's when they started to see things pinging and realizing. I mean, for as long as we've been out there, or if I've been out there, the different like field assistants who've been with the project for a long time have always said like, okay, if we are going out to capture one and it might be particularly difficult, then we won't be able to capture any other lorises throughout the night. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, whatever.
We'll
Like,
see. Yeah.
yeah, like sure. I don't know how you would know that, but now when I think about their ability to use ultrasonic vocalization,
Right.
I'm sure there's some like distress call that we couldn't even hear. And that would be the real utility of being able to communicate in a range that other animals in your environment wouldn't be able to hear.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
probably using it for contact calls, or you're probably using it to alert individuals about predators. And I think that's pretty much what they found when they were looking at the use of ultrasonic vocalizations in
That's crazy.
lorises,
Ultrasonic.
that it's most likely used for contact calls. And the thing that I find most interesting about it, I don't ask me how this works, but there is like individual distinctions in the calls, and so you can almost use them to identify, like, oh, this is so and so, like this is Johnny making this call.
It's like humans have distinct voice. Like you hear your parents' voice
Yeah.
or your significant other's voice. It's like I know that voice. Like
Yes, yeah, exactly. The same way we know that voice. I'm just I don't study like spectrograms or like vocal data. And so I was like, I don't know what that looks like in the actual data, but I fully trust these researchers. And it's kind of amazing to me that they have these distinctions.
I mean, well, the ultrasonic communication is insane. Like how you would even go about emitting a noise like that to me is crazy.
Yeah, like why do you evolve such a thing? And
Yeah.
it's fun because when we talk about ultrasonic vocalizations in other animals, it's a lot of like using it to measure space. I
Mhm.
mean, there are all these studies, not all these studies. There's a study about tarsiers who leap, which another fun fact about loris is they can't leap. So again, they're not doing that thing you find when you think of primates
Right, the
and
bouncing around and
yeah. They can only cross gaps either on the ground or by like bridging branches. And so
Really?
forest connectivity is actually really important for
Oh,
walruses.
well, yeah.
But yeah, they don't leap at all.
Do they have a prehensile tail?
They do not.
So
They
then how are
just
they
have,
getting from like branch to branch? Will they just pull it and
they use their arms. Yeah, they must have amazing core strength because the way that they do it is sort of reach across a gap, and then they will bring their legs around to that branch that they're holding on to. And so at any given point, like in that movement, they are maintaining their balance just by holding on to the branch with their arms, and then their legs come around.
that's really crazy that they don't have a prehensile tail. Wow, and they're doing all that. Wow, that's
Oh,
interesting.
allow we can't hear you, guy.
Sorry, I was on mute because I was getting that call. How long do the
Oh, yeah.
babies, how long do the babies hang out with the parents?
Okay, longer than you would expect as well. So we must have been a couple years ago now. Oh, time is so fake. We've seen individuals stay within their natal range. So we saw like their mother's home range is their natal range for a year. There's even instances of up to 2 years. And so there's probably some elements of like social learning or some information is being acquired while they're living amongst these related individuals before they go off to find their own home range and their own mate. So I'd say a year to 2 years.
Okay.
Do they have a mating season?
Some species they think there is a breeding season. I think pygmies is where they've seen the most evidence for that. But if I'm thinking back on all the babies that were born that I've seen in the Javans, it was sort of all over the place where there wasn't
Oh,
a
okay.
consistent only babies are born in this month or that month. But that's also the sort of thing that we would know more about it the longer we study one population.
Sure.
And so it might be very well the case that there is like a strict breeding season in most of the species, but we just don't know yet without that sort of multi-year longitudinal data to say,
Sure.
yeah, babies are happening in this isolated time of the year.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. And then, so what's like a unique, like slow loris behavior, or something unique to them that they do or don't do? Well, I mean, obviously the venom and like their existence is
That's
very
the first one
unique.
that always comes to mind. I was like, well, they're venomous. That's crazy. Um, unique slow. Well, no, it's not necessarily only slow lorises, but being able to gouge, like to create the holes that they feed off of. Not all
Yeah.
primates can do that, and so they have like special dentition that helps them with that. Um,
Oh,
yeah, the ultrasonic vocalizations, that's
yeah,
also
that's
a pretty
crazy.
unique thing for them. And to me, I would say this non-leaping behavior, the
Yeah.
way they bridge across things, it really just to me it speaks to how agile they are and how like I don't know, this sounds like weird and sort of poetic, but like how in tune they are with the forest structure. It's
Sure.
because it's such an important part of the way that they move and navigate throughout the night is to find paths that work for them. They can't just leap from place to place. They really, I think there's an intentionality in the way that they move and navigate a forest.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's crazy. So what is like typical slow loris behavior besides moving slow when necessary and eating?
Right. I mean, most like most wild animals, they're spending most of their time eating, looking for food, feeding. They'll interact with each other, they'll groom, they'll play
Mhm.
with each other. Um, Sleeping. Lots of gouging though, because the gums don't necessarily come out immediately. You don't like pull away
Sure.
some bark and it's like, oh, like biting into an apple. It's like, oh, look at all of this juice or whatever. And so you see them spend a lot of time creating these holes up and down a tree. And then the gum starts to be like to generate and then they can lap it up.
Is
So
that
go ahead.
is that dangerous for the tree or is it
It can be dangerous for the tree, yeah. If it's done unsustainably, it could kill a tree if it gets over if it gets
Too holy.
damaged too much. Because essentially you're damaging the tree and
Right.
it's trying
sure?
to fix itself. Um, but I've maybe once or twice there have been stories of them killing a tree, but in general, I feel like they move. They do revisit trees, but they sort of spread out their efforts to damage them. But they also feed on other things, right? So when it's
Right.
like the wet season, we might have those flowers. They'll eat a lot of floral nectar. You see sort of this swap between the gums and the floral nectar within the seasons. But the beauty of the gum is that it is still always available. So if
Sure.
you had a particularly dry season, they're not going to be like, oh my God, what are we going to do? There are no flowers to eat. They can still eat gums and insects.
So are they mostly arboreal? Are they mostly up in trees?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They are. I mean, I'd say that's where they always want to be. I would say they're pretty exclusive arboreal primates, but they
Okay.
will cross large gaps on the ground, and those gaps are largely coming into play in like human modified environments when that
Gotcha.
connectivity is no longer there. And it's like the most unnatural thing. It reminds me of like in horror films when they show like the half dead zombie crossing
Oh
over
yeah,
the
like some creature
frame, and they're just
speared or
like
something. Yeah, and it's very unnatural
moving in
and
this weird, yeah, like super articulated way. That's what it looked like to me.
oh
Just like you
really?
don't want to be here.
Right. It's like this feels unnatural for you. And so
Yes.
did they just sleep on a branch or do they make like a nest type of situation?
So they don't make nests, but they have a particular posture which we call a sleeping ball. So they form they can sit in like open branches. They actually, if bamboo is available, they might sleep in the middle of like a clump of bamboo
Ah, okay.
because the inside of that bamboo plume, as we would call it, probably it helps mediate the ambient temperature. So if it's too hot out or if it's colder out, it might be a little warmer or a little cooler inside of the bamboo. And so they'll hold on to bamboo and sleep in that, or they'll sit and like curl up into a ball on and like where the branch is sort of attached to the trunk. I don't know if that has a
Sure.
specific term, but
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So what is it thought that they do with this venom?
yeah. So the best evidence, a paper actually came out from my PhD advisor's lab in current biology that saying they're probably most likely using it for fighting with other lorises, like intraspecific
Oh,
fighting. So they are
Wow.
territorial,
okay.
and they will fight with each other as they get to the bounds of their territories, and especially with younger individuals who are leaving that natal range and going off to find their own home range and their own mate, they've got to cross through all of these other territories. So you tend to find that they've got a lot of scabbing on their heads because when they fight, it's like they bite at each other's heads.
Oh,
Right.
gee,
They've got
okay.
bold patches. Um,
They're a little rough looking sometimes, sounds like.
I mean, I there was one loris that we caught at our new site in Thailand, and we're like, I'm so this guy looked rough.
Oh,
He was his head was in various stages of like scabbing. We're like, oh, you have been places you shouldn't be. But he
right.
looked like a sub-adult, so he was probably starting to disperse and find his own home
And
range.
getting the shit beat out of him in the meantime.
In the meantime, yes, get into a lot of scuffles
So
with a
will
lot
they
of different people.
kill each other or they'll just hurt each other really badly?
That's a good question, and I actually don't have an answer for you. I haven't come across a lot of like dead loris bodies that I could say was that, but also
Okay.
in the forest, dead things don't stay for long.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
something else is gonna come along and like, oh,
I'm
this
just
is a
gonna come and
meal.
get it. But I have seen once in a captive setting at a rescue center, they accidentally put two males together, and one of them was killed by the other. Yeah.
Right.
Yikes.
So it is possible, but it's not something that I see regularly or
Right.
that I would necessarily say is what always happens.
Right.
But
Except do not put two males together in a captive
Right.
setting. Is probably
in
rule
in a
number one.
confined space, yes,
Yeah. Okay.
don't
Okay.
do it.
We may have to have a follow-up on this because there's so much to know that
Yeah,
about
these are fascinating little creatures. And
right.
then really quick before we wrap up here, they're predators besides humans in deforestation. What natural predators, so to
Sure.
speak?
Yeah, so there are reports of orangutans eating them.
Wait, orangutans were eating
Yeah, there was a report of
them?
this
Okay,
happening.
okay, okay.
There's like, I don't know if it's like a widespread epidemic of this happening, but there has been a report of orangutans eating a slow loris, cobras, birds of prey where
Sure.
they are, and then people, small children, people, dogs.
Oh yeah, I can see if they're on the
Small
ground.
children ate a loris.
Well, not eat a loris, but
Will hurt
Miss.
it probably on
Yeah.
accident, or
Yeah.
think
yeah,
it's a little toy and
All
yeah,
right.
a cute
the
Wow.
thing.
orangutan thing, that is crazy. And then real quick before we wrap up here, craziest field story or something that happened in the field that was like kind of crazy or that sticks out to you the most.
One thing that sticks out to me, and it's probably not even all that exciting, but when I was working in Vietnam, they were moving up and down these like limestone mountains. So we're essentially just like rock climbing throughout the nights, trying to catch up with these things that are just seamlessly moving.
Right, yeah.
I have such a vivid memory of one of my research assistants standing on the end of like a boulder that
Oh boy.
started to tip forward, and I had to like yank him back from the back of his shirt. We just stood there for a second, took a
Right.
deep breath, and we're like, all right, we're gonna go this way instead.
Right. Oh my
There are all
gosh.
these like little precarious,
Right.
can't step in the wrong place, or I just remember like we both looked at each other. I was like, that was a fall drop too, or
Right.
a
Yeah.
long drop. So
Right. Like
You
you
killed
crap your pants.
somebody's
Yeah. You should your pants a little
child.
bit because I did. So yeah.
I was like, we can't go now.
Right. Yeah. No, we're not going to go this route anymore. That's okay. That's pretty crazy. You know, having your research assistant just whoop, bye.
Right.
Yeah, we're just like, yeah. I was like, man, I really had your life
Yeah.
in my hands.
Yeah.
So it's those sort of it just really reminds you like, oh yeah, we're out here at night in the dark in a different place, and we really just have each other for the next 6 hours.
Oh yeah. So
Fabulous.
how long will an expedition be? Will it be all night essentially?
It's not sustainable to stay. Well, it's typical like in the daytime for you to be out and following primates for like 12 hours. Like that's normal. But trying to do that in the reverse,
Right.
it's like unsustainable. And so we
Right.
break it up into 6 hours, like 6 p.m. to midnight, midnight to 6 a.m.
Got it.
Yeah.
Because there's still stuff to do in the day. Like we still need to
Right.
people need to wake up on certain days. And so we try to break it up who's doing which shift when.
Mhm.
I personally like the late shift. The forest is a little quieter, people are a little sleepier, so everyone's a little quieter. The lorises tend to be a little more active, whereas
Sure.
yeah. But yeah, we break it up into 6 hour
That
chunks.
makes more sense.
Excellent.
Makes more sense.
Well, thank you very
so
much for your time. We
time.
appreciate
Yes,
it. Very
this is
interesting
fantastic.
that I didn't even know there was a poisonous primate.
Yeah.
I
Sorry.
just thought the vitriol that came out of our mouth was the most poison we had, but I guess there's real poison. Thank
Yes,
you.
Thank you. Well, we'll definitely have to have you back and
Yes.
follow for some
Yeah, we
follow
need
up.
more information.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Stephanie.
All
And
right.
then are you heading off to Thailand soon or
Probably in
enjoying-
June. Probably in
Okay.
June.
All
Very
righty.
cool. All right.
Just
Well,
for a
hopefully we
short
can
vacation.
follow up with you when you come back and
Right. Yeah.
discuss your research.
All righty. Thanks
Thank you
again.
so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for
Very
having me.
interesting. All
Always
righty.
fun.
Bye-bye.
Good. All right. So Bunny.